Hi everybody, my name is Josh and welcome to another Stukent expert session. Today we'll be hearing from Bryan Phelps, founder and CEO of Big Leap Marketing. Before founding Big Leap, Bryan managed accounts for some of the biggest SEO agencies in the country. He founded Big Leap 10 years ago and has grown it into one of the premier digital marketing agencies in the US. Today he will be teaching us about Google Analytics, one of the best and most popular web analytics tools. Now, without further ado, Bryan, the time is yours.
Hey everyone. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name is Bryan Phelps. I'm the CEO and founder of Big Leap. I got started in the digital marketing industry back in 2006. I started teaching myself, web development and SEO in my spare time, and was just really in love with the industry and was really excited about it. So I wanted to get more involved with it. So I joined a few different agencies, some of the biggest agencies, SEO agencies in the country, and ultimately just kind of that typical story. Sometimes I wanted to do it maybe my way or try to fix some of the things that I thought could be done better. So I started Big Leap in 2008, and we've continued to grow from there. About Big Leap a little bit, we're a digital marketing agency that really focuses on organic digital marketing, so SEO, online PR, content marketing, and things like that. We've grown quick over the last few years, and so we've had a lot of things we've learned over the years. But one of the main things that we really always come back to as we work with our clients is Google Analytics, and that's what we want to talk about today. Google Analytics is really at the core of all digital marketing. Of course, Google provides their free tool, Google Analytics, to use. There's other options out there, but by far you'll see Google Analytics pretty much everywhere you go in the digital marketing world. So why does it matter? Why analytics or Google Analytics? And ultimately, it provides you so much data and a lot of answers to the things that you're going to be looking at as you are involved with marketing or website development, things like that. So if we want to know, how many people are coming to my website, who are they, how are they interacting with my website? Those are the kinds of answers we can get from a tool like Google Analytics that ultimately helps us measure what we're doing or what you're doing as you're marketing a website. And even if you're doing traditional advertising, it can really help you understand how that's performing. The line between digital and not digital is really disappearing in a lot of ways. So people running billboards and TV and radio, a lot of that traffic ends up coming back to the website. So they're looking for ways to, how do I measure that and see if the advertising that we're running is helping drive our digital presence as well. So once getting into the marketing and advertising world, or even if you're in web development, things like that, it's good to get familiar with the basics of Google Analytics and getting familiar with their platform. So I'm going to walk through three different areas. There's, of course, getting started, getting the setup and configuration done right. Once you're in there, of course, you can start to look at some of the standard reports that they offer, which are really impressive. And then to really take it to the next level and to get the most you can out of Google Analytics, you need to understand how you can customize it for you and your business, or the company you work for, to get the most out of it. So when we start talking about the setup and configuration of Google Analytics, I'll talk about two main things. But one thing that's really good to understand is how Google Analytics structures their accounts. So if you look at this image to the right, it kind of shows the structure or hierarchy of their accounts. So when you go in, if you go to analytics.google.com, and log in with a Google account, you create your Google Analytics account. And so you can do that, and within there, then you can create a property, which is essentially a website or an app, or people can add you to an existing Google Analytics property for their website or app. And so the property is really where a lot of the information is flowing into from your website and their tracking codes. And then the next layer below that are the views, which you can have multiple views associated with a property. And so we'll talk about these a little bit more in depth later, but the views really let you kind of customize how people are looking at that. So different people in an organization, or if you work with other companies or agencies, may need a slightly different view of Google Analytics. And this screenshot here, it kind of shows an example of that hierarchy and why you may have multiple views. So starting at the left, you'll see the main account is there as the MF, that's the analytics account. This account only has one property, which is the MF main website. And you'll see right below that text, there's your GA or tracking code, your GA tracking code, which you should be aware of. It's usually starts with that UA, and you'll often use that across different services. So if you're ever asked, what's our Google tracking code ID or our Google Analytics ID, that's the number that people are referring to. And then within that, this example has two views. By default, Google will start with the all website data view, and that's exactly what it sounds like. That's all of your data as unfiltered as they will provide it to you. And we always recommend, and Google recommends, keeping that pretty as is, not making a lot of changes there, because if you do and start filtering traffic that's coming in there, you can't go back and undo that historically. So it's good to have one kind of raw, unfiltered view of your data. And then as you get more familiar with Google Analytics, you'll see some different reasons for creating new views and doing filters. The example that's shown here is a filter that was built to exclude IP addresses from people at that company. So we use that, and that's a really common example, so we can get more accurate data and exclude all the internal traffic that's happening that can come sometimes mess up your numbers if you're looking at how much traffic's coming in and where are they coming from, and is it converting into leads or customers. Excluding your internal traffic will help you get a better idea of what's actually happening there. And it's pretty common. Most companies will have quite a few views, but this is a good example of one to get started with by filtering out your IP address. Once you have your account set up, you've gone to Google Analytics, you've logged in, and you've set up your first property, you'll end up in a screen like this. And if you look in the very bottom left, there's a red square around the settings icon. That's how you get to this menu in the first place. You click on that, and then you'll look at the property settings, which is that top red box, and that's showing kind of we're in that MF main property right now. And then if you go down, there's some different property settings, user management, and then the tracking info is where your tracking code lives, which is what you see in that big box in the middle of the screen. So that's your main tracking code. That's what you're going to end up putting in the code of your website. And this is ultimately the code that Google Analytics uses to start tracking all your website visitors. And so this is required to really start getting all that data from your website into Google Analytics. Down below, I also put a blue square around Google Tag Manager, which is a kind of a totally different topic, but it's a new tool that Google's been using and people have been using a lot more lately. And it's something you'll definitely want to look into. And it's a kind of an alternative way of getting the Google Analytics code on your website, as well as any other codes that you may use. If you use other marketing tools, you'll definitely want to look into using Google Tag Manager. But again, this tracking code is what you'll use and is required to use to start getting your data. You'll notice in there on the second line and the second to last line, there's that UA code that I mentioned earlier. And that's, again, your kind of your unique identifier, so Google knows which account it's related to. So from that point, once you get that code installed, you're ready to go. You're going to start seeing data coming into your account. There's usually a couple-hour delay, in most cases, before your data starts showing up. But within a day, you'll start seeing some different information in your Google Analytics account. So going on from there, I want to just jump into some of the default standard reports that you can look at in Google Analytics and show you 6 of our favorite accounts. Before you really dive into those reports, though, it's good to understand what segments are in Google Analytics. I've highlighted them here with this red square, and they're at the top of almost every screen in Google Analytics. And by default, it will show you all of your users, which is that blue circle that says 100% of sessions. And that's great if you just want to see, hey, everybody that's coming to my website, what's happening there. But you can also break it down by different segments. Like I only want to see organic traffic, which in this example is 37% of the traffic, or paid traffic. Or you can start breaking it down into other custom segments, which I'll show you a little later on. I want to see what new people are doing on my website as opposed to my current customers. Obviously, those people are going to utilize the website a little differently, so it's nice to be able to break that down. And all these reports I'll show you down by that segment because, of course, it will vary quite a bit. So the first report that we like to look at, and it's convenient because as soon as you log in, it's a kind of a new report that Google Analytics has come out with probably in the last year or so, is this home report. And it's Google's attempt at just surfacing the most important data for you. So there's more information than what's shown here, but these are a few that we really like to see is on this home report of when do your users visit. So this chart is kind of showing you what are the most popular times for your website. And that can be, useful or interesting depending on your business. If you're, want to make sure your hosting is sufficient so your website doesn't crash during busy times, or if people are accessing your website for customer service, it can help you even know when to staff your customer service center, for example. The other charts are showing, hey, where are people coming from? You can look at this at a country level, like it's shown here. You could really dive down even into a city or state level too, to really understand, where people are coming from. And then the last one there on the right are what are the devices that people use? And this is really helpful because it's common that your mobile website is different than your desktop website. So when you're thinking about what's the mobile experience people are having or the desktop experience, you really want to factor in, well, how much of my traffic is actually seeing those sites? And the trend is really growing on the mobile side. This example you can see is even higher than desktop, which is becoming pretty common and normal. But there are some websites that we see where desktop is still much more popular. So when you're looking at the design of your website, you want to try to get a good reflection of the traffic coming into your website and what they're looking at. A lot of companies, they're sitting at their desks and they're looking at their desktop site because that's what's convenient for them right then. But they don't always know or look to see that, hey, half of my traffic is looking at our website on a mobile device. So we need to make sure, of course, that the mobile experience is good as well. The second report, which you'll see in that left navigation over there, is the real-time overview. And we love looking at this for different sites, especially if you have a lot of traffic. This is much more useful. There's a few white spots there that we had to blur out for our client's behalf. But you can kind of see on this, you'll see here's how many people are on the site right now, how many are desktop versus mobile again in real time, not just, over a course of, several weeks. And in this example, the desktop is 66%. So it's much different than the last screenshot we looked at. But you can also see, where are people coming from? What referrals sources are they coming from? Or are they coming from social? What keywords brought them to our website? Those are down the left side there. On the right side, you can see, what pages are they looking at right now? And on the bottom, where are they coming from again? So it's similar to what we showed before, but instead of showing, hey, here's what all these stats look like for 7 days or 30 days or a year at a time, you can see right in this second, what are people doing? And if you are involved with a website or a business that's doing anything right on the spot, if you're doing a big live event or webinars or things like that, it can be really interesting to see what impact that's having right away instead of having to wait for all that data to show up. The next report, and I highlighted the path to those reports on that left side. So this is under the audience section and under demographics overview, is a really interesting report because you can dig into this to see a good idea of what is the different demographics of the people coming to your website. The two examples here are age and gender, which are somewhat basic, but start to give you an idea of your demographics and perhaps even help you build out personas for your marketing efforts. So in this case, we can see that, hey, a lot of the people coming to this website, it's kind of a good spread on the age chart. I mean, most people are between 25 and 64, so kind of helpful, maybe not super helpful. And then the gender one is a little more unique, where 71% of the traffic is male versus female. And so coming back to the segments in the top, this is all of the traffic. This report can be really interesting when you start diving into those segments. So if we added a segment here to say, show me just our customers based on they log into their portal, or they reached a kind of a thank you page, thank you for purchasing a product page, we can identify them as a customer. And we can see what these demographics look like. Instead of looking at everybody that comes to the website, we can say, show me the demographics for my customers. And of course, from that you can see that could be a lot more useful. It can really affect how you market your products and or what kind of content you create for your blog to target the right demographics. The next report on the left there is under the acquisition section and the overview. So this, as you can see kind of in the middle there, is showing us what are all the different traffic sources that are bringing people into our website. And once you are working perhaps within a company, or if you start a company and you're spending thousands of dollars on digital marketing, you really want to know where is that money going and what impact, what return is it having. So in this example, you can see organic search is the #1 traffic source for this website, and followed by direct and email and referral, paid search, and social traffic. So in the first section, you see the acquisition. That's showing us how much traffic came in. The next section is the behavior. So once that traffic comes in, what's happening on our website? So right here, excuse me, you can see the bounce rate from by channel. So it's pretty consistent across most channels, but you'll see on that 5th row, paid search, there's a 73% bounce rate, which is double pretty much every other traffic source. So that's something we may look at and say, hey, we need to look into that. Maybe there's something funny happening there. Maybe on the paid search side, we're not bringing in the right kind of traffic if it's bouncing at such a high rate. So you can use this kind of report to see who's coming in, but also how's that traffic performing. And then on the right there, you can also look at how's it performing from a conversion perspective. From an e-commerce site, we can look and see what's our conversion rate. So one that stands out to me here is from email traffic has a 14% conversion rate, which is fantastic, versus that paid search line is only 1.68%. So that's another indicator that maybe paid search isn't performing as well as it could for this website, and can kind of signal me if I'm managing marketing or those efforts to say we need to look into our paid search to make sure that we're really bidding on the right keywords and we're getting the right people coming into the website. In the live version of Google Analytics, you can click around a little bit and even see revenue by each of these channels too. So it can help in just understanding, where is our revenue coming from at a channel level. The next standard report we're looking at here is under the behavior section on the left side, and it's under the site content, all pages. On this screenshot, it's given us more information about what content people are consuming on our website. So again, this is looking at all your traffic. You could break this down by social media or by organic search or by new customers or or existing customers to kind of see, what content are people enjoying and utilizing. So down at the bottom, it shows all those different pages. And again, this is there's a box over that, so we don't share specific URLs for some of our clients. But you would see each of those URLs differently and see how many people came in, how many unique people came in, how much time do they spend on the page, and bounce rate, things like that. And so it can really help if you're creating content, for example, understand how is your content performing. Are people spending a lot of time reading your content? Are they not? Which could be an indicator of maybe it's the wrong kind of content. So this is, again, really helpful to understand, now that we know people are coming to the website, what are they doing on the website? And this report under behavior and site speed overview is a really interesting report that not a lot of people look at in Google Analytics. There's a lot of statistics that show the longer your pages take to load, you're going to lose a large percent of your traffic, which of course is going to cause you to lose customers. So the quicker you can get your website to load, the bigger impact it can even have on your revenue and your traffic. So this chart will show you over time how long it's taking your pages to load. So kind of in the middle of the page there, this is saying our average page load time is 4.74 seconds, which is okay. Anything under 5 seconds we generally consider pretty good, but anytime you can increase that from, say, 4 seconds to 2 seconds, you'll see an increase in your conversion rates and in your traffic. I'm sure you've all been to a website that takes 10 seconds to load, and while 10 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, when you're talking about digital, that's an eternity. So people are going to fall off and they're going to exit out of your website. So we really want to pay attention to the site speed, and this is a great report to do that. So beyond the basic reports, there's a lot, of course, we can do to customize Google Analytics. By customizing it, we get a lot better data and more useful data that can help us improve our marketing and improve the experience people have on our website. So one thing you can do to customize your Google Analytics is start by tracking your conversions. And there's kind of two main ways to do that. One are goals, and another one is e-commerce. So we're going to start with the goal section. And this is pretty common for everything outside of e-commerce. So if you are trying to get people to fill out a contact form or get them to subscribe to a newsletter or even call you, we can track all of that in Google Analytics as a goal. And then again, in this example, break it down by traffic source. So the number one there is organic search, has a 1.59% conversion rate, and in this time period had 44 goal completions. You can see right below that, direct traffic was actually quite a bit less, but had more goal completions. So and the conversion rate is much higher. So again, you can kind of get a sense of what impact are these different channels having on your business, and knowing that, hey, it's great that a lot of traffic's coming in, but at the end of the day, is it completing a goal, which is of course really important factor for long-term success in digital marketing. To set up those goals, back in the settings sections that I showed you earlier, at the view level, which is that top left red box, there's a section in there called goals, and then you can click new goal, and you can track quite a few goals within Google Analytics. And there's some common ones that we usually recommend, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. If you're using call tracking, you can track those, contact forms, newsletter subscriptions. But you can also track a variety of different things that aren't always leads. For example, it doesn't mean that somebody's contacting you, but a common goal we see sometimes are people set a goal for 3 to 4 page views per session. So they want to see, are people engaged in the website? Are they visiting at least 3 or 4 pages? And if they do, that's a success. So there's lots of different things you can track as goals. And then e-commerce is probably a little bit more self-explanatory, but on the e-commerce side, once you have that set up and configured with your website, you can pull in that transaction data into Google Analytics to see how those different channels are performing and how much revenue is coming from them. So again, you can see in this example what the conversion rates are by channel, how many transactions happen, and then ultimately how much revenue came from that. And so to really get a lot out of Google Analytics, you really need that data. And that, again, isn't in there by default, of course, because you need to communicate with Google all that transaction data. So if you're in the e-commerce space, it's definitely something you want to get set up as soon as possible. Another thing we do to customize Google Analytics is their site search feature. So a lot of websites have a search box on them where you can search for a product or for content. And a lot of website owners don't really know how often that's being used or what people are searching for. So within Google Analytics, you can actually connect that to your Google Analytics, so you can get some of that data, and it will actually show you what are the search terms that people put in. And that can be really helpful information, because it can give you an idea of what are people looking for that they can't find, or are they looking for something we don't even offer. So if somebody came to our website and we're searching for a service we don't offer, that could be an indication that, hey, maybe there's an opportunity there. There's something, a new product or service we could offer, and there's already interest for that. In addition, you can see, how many people, if they do search, how many pages are they viewing, or how many of those people leave the website. And again, the whole goal around this is, how do we improve our websites and our website experience so people really enjoy the website and they find what they're looking for. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this is a section I talked about custom segments. So when you're going and creating segments, or in that segment section, you can create a custom segment. And so in this example, it's filtering users that visited a page that contains account or /site/account in the URL. So people that visit those pages are existing customers. And so we can essentially kind of tag them and say, hey, these are existing customers, and that will allow us to filter traffic on all those different reports I've already shown you by customers versus non-customers. And again, that can be helpful for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes you'll want to exclude customers from your data so you can see your conversion rates more accurately. If you have a lot of customers coming to your website, it's going to make it look like your conversion rate is really low. But in reality, if you exclude them, it will probably be a lot higher. Or you may want to just see reports for just your customers. If they have a customer portal, what pages are they accessing most often? Are they having a hard time finding certain pages? So again, it can come back to really improving, how people are able to interact with your website. Another thing you can do is build dashboards, which can be really useful, especially if you are reporting to someone. So if it's reporting up to your boss or if you're reporting to a client, since Google Analytics it can be a lot, sometimes there's a lot of reports, there's a lot of data out there. You can build essentially your custom dashboard to show people just the data that's most interesting to them. So this example is an SEO dashboard. It tells us how all the different SEO metrics are performing. So this is an example that we could just send to a client and show, here's how things are going in Google Analytics. And that makes it so they don't have to go into Google Analytics and click 6 different reports to get the data they want. We can also make this so it automatically sends to them. So again, it can be a great way to keep track of your Google Analytics data without having to log in all the time. And the last customization is alerts, and it's kind of similar to dashboards in a way where you can set up an alert and it will send you a notification if it meets certain criteria. So this example is saying if our AdWords traffic drops by more than 50% on the same day compared to the same day last week, send me an email or a text. And that can be really useful if you're not able to log in every day, and it helps you be more aware of potential problems as they're happening, instead of finding out 3 days later when you have time to log back into Google Analytics. So there are certain ones that can be really useful if it's, hey, if my overall traffic is dropped too low, or if it's increased quite a bit, I also want to be aware of that. There's different metrics like that, and you can set alerts around those to be aware of what's happening. So to summarize a little bit with Google Analytics, these are, I think, the 3 steps to getting started. One, of course, is making sure your account's set up and your Google Analytics is configured and installed on your website. Second is get familiar with the standard reports. There's quite a bit of information in there and a lot you can learn about your website traffic. But the real power in Google Analytics comes with a few of those customizations. As you customize and bring your own data, like your e-commerce data, into the platform, it becomes a really powerful tool to improve your marketing efforts, improve your website experience, and ultimately be a better marketer, a better website owner. And what we've seen as we've done this with our clients is that ultimately, at the end of the day, it provides them a lot of interesting data that helps them make better decisions about their marketing and the dollars they're putting into that. Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to connect. And if there are any questions, please reach out to us at Big Leap. Our website's here. You can also catch us on Twitter as well. It's Big Leap MKTG, Big Leap Marketing. Thank you.